Lunch with Lee was recorded at Hive Sound Studios, Sydney's newest podcast, recording and all audio hub. If you have any recording needs, go to the website, Hive Sound Studios. Hello and welcome to Lunch with Lee. I'm your host, Shane Lee. Today on the show, Damon Herriman, an Australian actor, best known for his roles as Dewey Crow on the crime series Justified. He also played Charles Manson not once, but twice. First for the Netflix series Mindhunter, and in the comedy drama Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's just received critical praise and he won the Best Supporting Actor in the recent Robbie Williams biopic Better Man. 2018, and this is the bit I love, he was awarded the Ori Kelly Award for his body of work that contributes to Australian national identity. Huge effort, that. He loves board games, wine, so he's going to be a good friend of mine. He loves cricket. Welcome, Damon.
Thank you, Shane. Thanks for having me.
Mate, good. And Toby Rudolf, a current rugby league footballer representing the Cronulla Sharks on 102 occasions. I think he's one of the most outspoken, honest sports people that I've ever met. He's funny, he's open, and he loves wearing budgie smugglers every time I see you on Instagram. How are you, mate?
I'm really good. That's another amazing wrap. Two from two there, Shane. Nicely done.
But I'll start with you, Toby. Mate, footy season's about to start. Your quick tips now. Who's going to be in the top four this year? Obviously the Sharks.
Obviously the Sharks going to win the whole comp. You got to see. I've heard Bulldogs get tossed around a little bit, which is an interesting one. Sort of coming from where they've come from the last few years, a bit of improvement, and I can't see how it wouldn't happen again. You got to put the Storm in there. They're always up there, and the current four-time reigning premiers, Penrith. So
No Broncos.
I mean, Madge could do something special. He did it with the Blues last year for sure, and he's a very experienced coach, a lot of runs on the board. He could do something special. The thing with rugby league that is a beautiful thing with it is you don't really know. Like you saw in 2023, the Broncos made the grand final. You think, oh, well, they'll be in there next year. And then, you have a team like them that goes down, the Bulldogs go up. There's always some sort of, interesting sort of dynamics there. But that's you asked me what I think, that's what I think.
There you go, mate. Well, as I said, you're very outspoken. And Dame, you started as a 10-year-old boy in Sullivan's.
I did.
And no formal training. So was that actually shot in Melbourne?
It was shot in Melbourne, yeah. It was. I mean, look, I think the training was essentially on the job, I guess. I was working with a lot of kind of great Aussie actors in that show. And that sort of, it was kind of, I really stumbled into it. I got an agent through my dad, in Adelaide where I was growing up.
So was your dad in the game?
Not really, but he sort of, I think he just had a sense that he thought I might be able to do it, just from doing play acting around the family and that sort of thing. And so he got me in touch with an agent in Adelaide, and then one day he was on a work trip to Melbourne, and he kind of went in to visit all the casting directors of Crawford's and Grundy's and all the places that made these shows, and kind of saying, "Oh, can you give my son an audition?" And they were like, "Who's this guy?" Like, "We're fine, thanks. We've got enough kids in Melbourne." And I think they kind of, got sick of him and to sort of shut him up. They said, "Oh, look, all right, well, if you fly him over, we'll give him a general audition."
Amazing.
Which I did for Crawford's and got a role in the Sullivans after that. And it's sort of.
What's your dad's name?
Noel.
Noel. No, well, you needed Noel because I know you were in a school play. I think you played a tree or something.
Close, crocodile.
You played a crocodile?
Yeah, I played.
It wasn't very close, but you stole the show apparently.
I did. Yeah, no, it was a rendition of Peter Pan, and the crocodile was it was meant to be like a muso.
Crocodile's always been a fundamental character.
Usually so, right? Yeah, tick-tock, tick-tock, out comes the croc. So I put like a little Elvis country western version to him for no direction at all. I just sort of went with it. And mainly you couldn't understand what I was saying. I speak fast as it is, and I was just, but I was like 12 years old, and parents and kids sort of loved it. So that's been the peak of the acting career so far. Hopefully maybe one day.
You needed an Noel Herriman to take it to the next level.
I did.
He didn't knock it down the doors. You could have been,
He's still going. I'll have a word to him, see if there's anything he can do. I mean, he's 81 now, but he'll,
If he's looking for a passion project,
But so you started, as I said, a 10-year-old, Damon, in Sullivan's. You must look back recently, once upon a time, you're hanging out with Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie and Leonardo DiCaprio. Did you ever think you would get there from that stage?
No,
was it a vision for you, like to
No, not at all. I mean, it's funny. There's a tape on the internet of me on the Don Lane show when I was 10, but to talk about the Sullivans, and he says, what do you want to do? And I said, I'd love to do a movie. I've never done a movie, and then kind of years and years passed without that ever happening. And then I did The Big Steal when I was 19, which was very exciting. But then another 10 years before another movie. Like, no, I never. I was always, and sort of still am to some degree, a bit glass half empty. I kind of like, oh, well, it's not going to happen. I'll kind of hang in there just in case because I don't want to regret missing an opportunity. But whenever this stuff has happened, it's a real pinch yourself moment for me. I'm never kind of seeing it coming. And I still kind of can't believe how lucky I am, to be honest.
And obviously you played the crocodile so well, but and you thought, will I go down the acting path? But was footy always in your thoughts?
Yeah, like I wished every birthday since I can remember to be a professional football player when you get the birthday wish.
Yep.
So
That's lovely.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I've told a few people that, and they've sort of said, "Oh, you've manifested it." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess in a way, possibly right." There's been other sort of, I played guitar for quite a few years, and that was a big passion for a while. But football's just always been somewhat at the forefront. Whether it's just because it was the thing I was best at throughout my life, and I always just was so obsessed with it. It's honestly been a lifelong passion, a lifelong love. That's just always been in my life. So I've just always sort of played it.
I was thinking earlier before I did a bit of research. Do you look back? What sort of person are you? Do you look back and watch your work? Watch one of your films that you've been in or a show you've been in? And are you critical on yourself?
Oh, incredibly.
Really?
Incredibly, to the point of it being a bit depressing. So
Right.
I always watch something once because I need to know, I just want to know, just apart from anything else, just want to see the thing. I want to see it. How did it turn out? I'm usually cringing, almost watching through fingers when I'm on screen because there are just way more bits that I'm not liking about myself than I am liking, and they vastly outweigh the bits that I'm happy with. You just kind of go, why did I do that? But I often don't watch it more than once. Sometimes if something is really cool, I'll watch it again, especially if there's a premiere or something you're going to and you kind of have to. But after that, I don't tend to,
It's funny, when I took 5 for 33 at the MCG in front of 100,000, I watch that all the time.
Every day.
Every day.
Motivation.
If there was an acting equivalent of that, Shane, I would watch that too.
But are you critical on yourself when you watch games you play? Like you're tough
Massively
on yourself?
so. I don't get me wrong, it's easier to watch the good games you play in.
Of course.
But it is as important, if not more important, to watch the failures. I had one game this year against the Bulldogs where easily the worst game of my career. And it took me a while. I didn't watch it straight away. Usually I get home and I watch it, sit down, sort of so I can, it's fresh while it's fresh in the mind. But this one I had to wait a few days. I actually got dropped after this performance. It was so bad. And yeah, you do. Like it. I think everyone's different. Dale Finucane would watch it on the bus just with no shame. And just like watch it with the commentary loud, so everyone could hear, "Oh, good tackle, Dale Finucane." So he would just sort of get around that, yeah. But
how do you like this? Like, and I feel like this with cricket too. Like how do you just sort of determine whether you were bad that day or the luck didn't go your way? Like sometimes I feel like that with like someone, a batsman will get out for a low score, 2 innings in a row, or a bowler, get smashed around. I'm just like, But maybe that just happened to be a really good ball they got twice in a row, that batsman. Or, maybe you just the luck didn't go your way and it's like, oh, you were terrible today. You were a really bad player. But so much of it is, no, but there was that one killer ball. No one could have hit that.
And your mindset, that's a key to longevity. Like Mark Waugh, he was always unlucky. It was never his fault.
Right.
So it didn't matter to him. So he was just unlucky, right? So he never felt down. Shane Warne never read or watched the news when he did bad. He did it when he did well. So he worked himself up. And there's a bit in that, I think. Yeah.
I think like there's always an aspect of luck for sure with everything, but there's always, if in a perfectionist mind, not that I have one, but I know a few friends of mine that have that sort of mindset. And although you're right, it could be a bad luck, but they say, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. And that can, as you said before, it can weigh on you. It can be a positive, it can be a negative. It just depends. Everyone's sort of different in every sort of aspect.
Well, I remember Mark Waugh played a reverse sweep in a test match before people were reverse sweeping.
Right.
And he got out for 98 or something. Oh. And he came off our board and said, what the fuck was that? Have you ever tried a reverse sweep before? Oh. And he said, no. He said, I was fucking unlucky. Hey, Tobes, I want to ask you, I said at the start, you've been very honest and you've been very open with your sexuality. And you said you've kissed men and you've kissed women.
Yeah.
And I think once you said that you're in a sauna in Germany and you found an older lady you got quite aroused. Would you describe yourself as fluid or maybe just not very fucking fussy?
No, I think the ladder's pretty good. Yeah. I identify myself definitely as heterosexual, but I don't know. Every now and again, I just like to tongue a bloke. If he's a mate, just fuck get here, give me a kiss, mate. I fucking love you. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's the latter for sure.
Well, it's funny because like, do you think sometimes you're probably playing in the wrong era, like in a lot of ways, like. It's more open now, but
it's awesome.
It's very, very refreshing because like a lot of sportsmen, you really sort of, with the amount of media and social media, you sort of harnessed quite a bit, right?
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I first made those comments about during the whole Manly saga, and I just wanted to sort of back up the community and be a friend to them. And
Good on you, mate.
My coach sort of pulled me aside because he heard the comments I'd made, and he was sort of going like, "What are you saying?" And everyone, if you say something outside the norm, people just freak out, especially in professional organisations, there's sponsors and all these things to deal with. So I think it can be seen. It can go both ways. But in the end, after like my coach realised that I was genuine about what I was saying, and I just what you said before, I don't really give a shit. He backed me up wholeheartely, as did the whole club. So whether I'm playing in the wrong era, I don't know. If I was playing back in the day and I was doing that, who knows what would have happened? But,
who knows? It would be tough for Ian Roberts and those sort of guys. But
I've heard stories from him about that those times, and terrible, mate, terrible. He had his family, mum and dad sitting in the crowd, and people were just chanting, screaming homophobic slurs while he's playing, and I couldn't imagine that.
No good at all. No. Now, you talking about your coach backing you up. I know you made your shoulder injury over the off break. Off season, I should say. And then you had some black mold or something in your house. You're out of your house.
Yeah, that was a slow news day.
But the opening round of the NRL season starts with the Sharks playing Penrith in Las Vegas. And you're still injured. Have you had a word to the coach to say maybe come over for a bit of moral support? Or is he backing you on that trip or not?
Well, I haven't had one word. I have had thousands of conversations.
Get me to Vegas,
Get me to Vegas, I'll do anything. And it still is a resounding no. Unfortunately, you know what? Good and bad, we're very close. My coach and I have a very good working relationship. But as a result of that, he knows me all too well. And he's sort of saying, well, you'll be over there in a holiday mindset. I'm like, mate, everyone's going to be there in a holiday mindset. Obviously, the boys have a job to do. I've offered to be the gear steward. I've offered to be the water boy. Any job, I'll be the coach, mate. You can just stay home and I'll coach the boys.
I think he's doing the right thing, mate. We did a big season for you this year.
Everyone says that.
Mate, is it true you won a green card originally back in the green card lottery here? Did that got you over to America for the first time?
Is there a green card lottery?
That's a thing. Certain countries, America gives away 50,000 green cards every year. You have to apply, and it's literally a lottery. And then after you get through the lottery part of it, you have to kind of prove that you are an appropriate choice to be a resident. I won that way back in '99, and I went over there and had a really horrible time. It was a very different time then for Australian actors. Unless you were one of the really big movie stars, there just weren't any of us there. And so I got very lonely. I didn't know anybody. I also had no American credits, and that really made a big difference. About 5 years later, I did a film called House of Wax, which shot in Australia. It's the Paris Hilton horror movie for anyone who remembers that. And because it was suddenly an American credit, I was able to kind of give it another shot over there. And that got me an agent and a manager, and it made things a lot easier. And that's kind of what opened the door there.
I want to ask you, I mentioned at the start that you've played Charles Manson twice, a serial killer. Yeah. And you originally played like good guys. And so when you look in the mirror and you look at yourself and you're saying, why am I so good at playing a serial killer? Is that disturbing? How do you feel about that?
I don't tend to do that, Shane, but I will now.
I'm sure you're not a method actor.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. No, I mean, I guess I don't sort of think of it as like whether being good at playing bad guys or anything in particular. I think I just really enjoy playing interesting characters, especially if they're really clearly defined, especially if they're different from me, and I can sort of sink my teeth into making a believable human being out of this person who's not me, and often that it happens to be the villains that are like that, and especially in the case of the Manson that I got to play in Mindhunter has this 4-hour makeup job where I really do look exactly like him. Like it's to the point that there's photos of me as Manson. When he died, there were articles that used the photo of me as Manson saying Charles Manson passed away yesterday. And I was like, that's not Charles Manson, that's me. Wow. But the makeup was that good.
And it's a Japanese
Yes,
artist.
yes,
He's like the best in
Kazu
the world,
Hiro.
yeah.
He's amazing. He's the best in the world. And so, like when you're looking in the mirror and you look like the character exactly,
Yeah.
I'd say at least half your job's done. You walk onto set filled with so much confidence. And the crew, when they first saw me, they were just like, "Oh my God,"
And no word just to walk down a dark alley.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would have been tempting. My God.
And what was he even had like the detail these makeup artists go to, like even your eyelids or something were like his eyelids. You had different eyelids to him. I didn't even know people had different eyelids.
Yeah, he did some sort of thing where he tucked my own eyelids back, glued my own eyelids back inside the kind of, I don't know, inside under the bone to kind of make them look more like his. And like even the swastika in the forehead was like an indentation. And there's pretty much no part of my face, my real face, that's in that episode.
How did that feel, having the eyelids in the back of your head? Was it painful?
Oh, kind of weird, but I mean the whole thing felt weird.
Would it change the facial expression?
A little bit, I mean, when your whole face is covered in a prosthetic like that, it's weird in itself because you're not sure. I mean, he's so good at his job that Kazu, when you do make a facial expression, it still showed, but it is pretty weird because the skin on your face is not your skin, and as the day goes on, you're doing that scene over and over and over again. You get this kind of slick of your own sweat between your real skin and your fake skin, and it's by the end of the day, you just want to tear it off.
I'm claustrophobic. I'd hate that.
You would. Yeah. It's not it's not fun. You do really want to rip it off at the end of the day. But once it's done, you're glad you did it,
I saw I read something about Jim Carrey in The Grinch where he was like, and he had to use he used army tactics or something to get over the itch and the.
Yeah, apparently he had CIA torture trainers who came in because for him it was torture, which I absolutely get because that was an even longer makeup job and weeks of it, weeks and weeks and weeks. I only did 3 days on Mindhunter.
How long did it take for you to get from you to Charles Manson, that process? Like how many hours, or was it?
The makeup, you mean? Yeah. I think it was about
3 murders.
3.5. It was about 3.5, 4 hours. It got a little shorter each day.
Okay.
I think the very first time was about 5, and then it was 4, and then it was so you couldn't drink, you couldn't eat all day because it would mess with the makeup too much. So the whole day I'm just drinking smoothies through a straw. It was definitely the hardest thing I've done from a physical perspective as an actor.
And when you played in Once Upon a Time, what was Quentin Tarantino like to work with? Like he's
a dream.
Pulp Fiction is my favourite movie of all time.
Right.
And was he's
exactly as you see him on interviews. He's like a really enthusiastic. He's like an excitable teenager. This guy who just genuinely loves movies and loves making them and he's full of stories, full of anecdotes. Anything you kind of happen to mention, go, oh, wasn't that guy in that movie? He goes, well, I tell you, he was, and he just starts going, and 10 minutes later, he's told you everything about this actor. And it's just fascinating, like it was amazing to be around.
Yeah. I sort of conflicting sort of understanding of working with him, with you, is that, so you ended up, and did you shoot a lot of footage for that show?
There was a bit more.
2 minutes, like
there was. Yeah, I shot for 3 days, and there are 2 extra scenes that are actually on the DVD and the iTunes download. They're just not in the actual film. But he shot 100 minutes. There's 100 minutes more of that film of all the characters that he still potentially is one day going to make an extended. I mean, it's already long, but could be like a mini-series or something. I'm not sure what. But there's a really cool scene that happens after Manson goes to the front door and speaks to Margot Robbie and the other character, Jay. And then he goes round to the guest house out the back, and there's a kind of it's quite an amusing scene where he's kind of selling himself as a pop star to the manager who lives there. And I could see why it wouldn't fit in the film because it sort of takes away his creepiness. It's kind of it's a funny Tarantino scene, but it was really fun to do. That was probably the most fun part of the job.
He does dark comedy very well. Mate, do you think as a forward prop, you almost have to take on a character when you go on the field yourself?
You know what? It's interesting because I'm not the biggest fan of confrontation off the field.
Right.
But as soon as you cross the white line and it's there's refs and it's sort of like what's the word for it? Just like a institutionalized, wrong word, but it's a made up game, right?
Yeah.
As soon as you get across that white line, there's no confrontation. It's just football. I see it as.
Okay.
I don't see it as physical. It's physical contact, but you know, if a bloke tackled me in the middle of the street and started laying into me, it'd be a bit weird. But on the field, it's kind of just that's what you do, you know.
Well, didn't that happen in a nightclub years ago? Because you look like a rock and roll wrestler. Didn't someone come up to you in a nightclub and try to attack you or something?
There was a time I was at East Rugby Club before I was playing football, playing for the Sharks, and a mate of mine, his name's Lindsay Stevens.
Yeah.
Me and him were just doing wrestling moves on each other. It could be that. Choke slams and attitude adjustments and tombstones and all that.
Choke slams.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time.
That's choke slams in your business, mate?
I mean, look, if the role requires it, you know.
Mate, I ask everyone that comes on Lunch Relay the same question, and I'll ask you first, Damon. A young boy or girl wants to go into the arts or into acting. What advice would you give them?
Look, if they're really a little kid, I mean, you know, there are things like in Sydney, for example, the Australian Theatre for Young People, which is a great way to kind of get started and get to know people. I mean, a lot of it, you know, it's the experience of doing it, but it's also who you get to know. You know, people who are maybe more in their late teens or early 20s, you know, going through any of the big acting schools is always a great thing, but it's hard to get into, but it definitely opens doors for you. But if you can't do that, then just try and make stuff with like-minded friends, you know, put on plays or make short films. That's how people like, you know, we're talking on air about Nash Edgerton, who directed Mr. In Between. He and I kind of got to know each other 25 years ago because we were both into making short films. And it's interesting that the people that you start doing that with end up often working with you later in life. And I think that would be my advice.
Same advice for a 29-year-old kid?
For a 29-year-old?
Just wondering if it was
Noel Herriman, my dad.
We've
already gone there. We've got to work that. We've got to sort that out.
We'll call you Mr. In Between Careers.
Nice. That was nice.
No, but what advice would you give a young boy or girl that wants to go into sport?
Yeah, well, it's you got to make it your passion because you know what, if you don't want to work hard for a very long period of time and it's not your passion, you don't love it, you won't make it. Like there's a lot of other things you can do in life and there's a lot of better things I can think of doing than running Coogee Stairs at 5 a.m. in the off season. But if you're really committed and you really want to do it, then it's not work, it's a passion and you love it, and then you don't work a day in your life.
Do you know at what age because everyone doubts themselves. And I know I did in sport, even you might be playing under 12s, and until you do well in under 12s, you know you're good enough for under 12s. And every level you go up, until you succeed. Did you have a point in your sporting career where you went, I'm actually good enough and you really believed in yourself?
Yeah, when I was 22 in 2018.
Okay, yeah.
I remember it clearly.
Yeah, you do, don't you?
Yeah, I remember it. My mum flew up for a game. I moved to Brisbane from Sydney, moved out of home when I was 21. I turned 22, season started, round 1 was on, and I was on the bench. And I said to the coach, mate, I didn't move here to play off the bench. I moved here to be a starter. We played the Burleigh Bears at Pissy Park. I remember it so well, every single aspect of it. My mum, my uncle, my auntie all flew up. And I just put on a clinic. Something clicked in me.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing. And then from then on, I just knew that I could sort of match it with the best. And Sharks told me that year, the rest is sort of history. But that was the game. And that year, the whole year was, I still look back on it as like the most formative year of my life.
And it's funny how easier things get then. Like I remember playing one of my first games and for Australia, you walk out and I could hear everyone in the crowd, even what they were saying.
Yeah.
And after a while, you just don't hear that anymore. You're just there doing your job.
Yeah.
Did you have a moment like that in your acting career where you went, I'm good enough here and I'm mixing it with the best?
No, but I'm looking forward to that moment happening one day.
Come on, mate.
Look, no, I mean, you definitely have moments where you feel like, this is a big break, you know, like doing The Big Steal when I was 19 felt like a big break, and then doing House of Wax because it was American felt like a big break, and then when I got Justified, that American show, that was certainly a break because it opened more doors. And then, of course, the Tarantino thing. You know, there are definitely those moments where you go, wow, this is beyond my wildest dreams. I don't know if I've ever quite had the moment, maybe in little moments where you feel like you did a good take of a scene or something. You're like, yeah, I think I actually did a really good job there. But I don't know. I've got too much self-doubt for those moments to last too long, because then you do a bad take and you're like, no, you shit. No, you shit.
Do you ever look back at a take thinking in your head you were thinking something different to what you were emoting?
Yes, it's horrible. It's so disconcerting because you're like, what the hell are you doing? I thought that was a really good day. And I am, it actually really messes with you because you think you're in control of your capabilities or what your body's doing, what your face is doing. And sometimes, you do watch something and go, okay, that's scary to think I didn't know that I was doing something completely different.
Does the flip side happen as well, where you think you think it didn't make it, and then it just turns out gold?
Yeah. There's a scene in a Nash Edgerton film from years ago called The Square, where Tony Hayes, wonderful Australian actor, and I had a scene together, and we were both like, I'm not feeling this. He was like, nah, mate, I'm not either. At the end of it, we both were depressed, going, that scene, we were both crap in that scene. And then we saw the movie, and we're like, wow, it's totally fine. I don't know what. I don't know. Like, it's like we both went into autopilot and kind of went, because sometimes, as an actor, you want to feel it. It feels like you're doing it better when you feel it. Sometimes you just have an out-of-body experience. You don't feel it. So you do kind of go into this autopilot thing. You do. And you're like,
same as
okay,
sport.
I'll just go on autopilot and hope for the best. And then we watched it back and I'm like, the autopilot worked. It was fine.
Mate, there was many a game where I thought I bowled really well, and I've watched the highlights and gone, fuck, I can't believe I got picked for the next game. Mate, I want to ask you a question. I said at the start, in your pastime, you like wine, you like board games,
usually combined, actually.
So like
Great fun.
Like cricket.
Great fun.
So when the cricket's not on, you got a glass of wine in your hand. What movie would you put on?
Oh boy, I mean. Look, I guess it depends if I'm going. If you mean like one that I love as a classic that I put on.
Not necessarily one you're in, but like one that you like.
Oh, I mean, the one that I probably would say is kind of close to perfect for me is Goodfellas.
Yeah, how good.
I remember seeing it at the movies when it came out, and it's funny, that movie, because it's one of those movies that's grown with appreciation. Like, it was appreciated at the time, but it's become a true classic now. People remember that film, but they often don't remember what beat it at the Oscars. Would you know what beat it at the Oscars of that year, if I asked you?
What year was it?
I think it was 92 or 3. Yeah. It was Kevin Costner's Dances with Wolves, which was a great film, but no one ever mentions that anymore. No one talks about Dances with Wolves anymore.
It was a good film, but it wasn't.
But Goodfellas, you're like, how did it beat Goodfellas, right? And Goodfellas has kind of grown with, and I love that movie.
Yeah. And Toes, what about you, mate? You're over in Bali. You might be lying by the pool as a hot grandmother next to you, and you got a glass of wine. And then what movie do you want to watch?
I was wanting to start that by saying I was 14.
Got to go with the Golden Girls.
Golden Girls. Now, you know what? My favourite movie of all time, because of my age, I suppose, is Lion King. That was what I was raised on, literally. It's awesome. Number 1. Number 2, Shawshank Redemption. Yep. Which I think was similar to Goodfellas. When it first came out, it had terrible reviews, and then all of a sudden it sort of picked up.
Later on, I read that too. Yeah.
So I'd say one of those two will be or obviously Golden Girls.
You know what? I've not seen.
Murder She Wrote.
This is insane. I have not seen Shawshank Redemption.
Have you not?
I know, isn't that crazy?
Like, mate, you got to watch it.
I know, and so many people that I know love that movie, and I just somehow haven't seen Shawshank Redemption.
I genuinely envy you, because I would pay to be in your shoes to watch it for the first time again.
Yeah, watch it again. Well, I thank you both for coming on Lunch with Lee. We're going to have a little bit of lunch now. It's Valentine's Day today.
It is.
And what does one do on Valentine's Day?
Tonguey blokes.
The boys go and tongue some blokes at the pub. We're going to the pub.
Go. Sounds good to me.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming to the show.
Thanks, Shane.
Cheers, Shane.
Thanks, Tabs. That's it for Lunch with Lee this week. A big thank you to our guests, Damon Herriman and Toby Rudolf. Thanks to our sponsors, Red Roo Vodka, Hive Studios, Richard Bowman & Co. and VHS Media. Make sure you hit follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from, and do us a favour, hit 5 stars, and while you're there, if you're passionate, please leave a review. Our official Lunch with Lee photography was done by Felicity Kelly. You can find her on Instagram at Felicity Kelly Portraits. Once again, thanks to our producer Dan McHugh. We'll be back next time for another cracking episode of Lunch with Lee. We'll see you then.